Hi, Sandy.
Hi, it's Dave.
Hi, it's Kirk.
Welcome to the A.D.K Rock and Metal channel, and today we are going to be talking not talking to our generator, maybe if we're going a bit mental, but we are going to be doing our random discussion generator with a selection of random topics, all relating to the rock and metal scene, although there are a couple of joker questions in there which are kind of a little bit curveballs. Didn't tell you about this, did I? No. Okay, so they could come up, which could be interesting. But yes, we need to go to press the button on the random discussion generator. And did you want to kick it off this time?
Yeah,
So let's go for it. No, it hasn't finished yet. Got intro.
Oh, we go.
Okay, so if a musician makes a racist or sexist comment, but later makes an apology, should you forgive? So there's been a few of these recently. This actually came up because of a recent video we did. So we've had a singer who's made comments that relating to Nazis and on those kind of viewpoints and transphobic comments. We've also had, we've had Phil Anselmo has made comments historically, included a Hitler Nazi salute. But that's all been later, they've apologised afterwards. But would you generally think that it should be accepted that after they've apologised for it through bad taste? Or we had Prince Harry dress up as a military fancy dress, didn't he, in a Nazi uniform? So we've had a few of these sort of things. Now, I guess the context is we're all aware of them, and do we hold bad blood with these people? Have we forgotten about it? Did we kind of just take it as a...
I mean, first off, you've got sort of two sort of routes this sort of situation can take. Yes, the person in question may apologise, but why have they apologised? It's in probably most cases down to the backlash of their comments or what they've done, rather than them sort of in hindsight thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done or said that. So how valid is an apology when you're kind of forced into it by your fans, bandmates, record label?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good point.
For the continuation of your project, whatever it may be, the people around you might say, you've got to retract that, you've got to apologise for that, so we can, try and regain our position and carry on as a band or whatever. But if they're genuinely in well, that's the only reason people apologise, is when they're called out on it, isn't it? Otherwise, probably wouldn't have said it in the first place.
Yeah, because
or have that view in the first place.
You're either going to say it because you're trying to do sensationalism, you're trying to stir up some controversy so that you can get maybe publicise your band, maybe you're not in the limelight enough, so doing something like that makes it accessible. What worries me is when a lot of these people do it is they're drunk, and you tend to say a lot of really honest things when you're drunk about how you generally feel, because your inhibitions and your self-editing mechanisms disappear when you're drunk, so you just talk bollocks and it all naturally comes out. So there's a lot of, I think, if people say, oh, I'm really sorry about it, I was drunk. So I'm thinking, well, what you're saying is, I'm really sorry I was being way too honest at that point about how I genuinely feel. And now that I'm sober, I don't want to apologise. I'm apologising. I didn't mean it. It was in bad taste, yada, yada, yada. It was just meant to be a joke, yada, yada, yada. I just thought, and you're like, I don't believe that. I think if someone says something like that, they underlyingly have some sort of belief in that system. So when Phil made his comments and did Nazi salutes and stuff like that, whether he did it with the intention of being like a white supremacist sort of thing, or whether he was just kind of accusing the crowd of being Nazis or whatever it might be, you just don't do that. You know the intention of it. So, but I think obviously we're talking about also Slaughter to Prevail singer Alex Terrible, I think was the one that kind of huge amount of that came up on the channel when we did a review of the song Conflict about his beliefs, etc., which I really wasn't aware of when we did the review. So, but we had a real kind of split between people sort of saying, well, if he made comments in something he did historically in the past, but he's apologised and he said he's no longer part of that, we should move on, but other people have said, well, would you let Hitler move on? Obviously, of course, Hitler did a lot more worse than saying a few words.
Okay, so I think I better come in at this point. I've not read any of the comments about Alex Terrible. My fear is that people are really diluting the term Nazi. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we should not be making comparisons just because somebody makes a comment which might be perceived as being transphobic. That's not the same as somebody who orchestrated the murder of 6 million Jews. So we do need to put that into context. I'm very much against cancel culture in rock and metal. However, there are some instances where I can see why it would be so diabolical what somebody has said. So we know that the two best examples of this are Count Grishnak from Burzum, who is openly anti-Semitic, a white supremacist, and then also the singer from that French black metal band, Death Spell Omega, who has said some unforgivable things about Jews, and also has a disturbing interest in paedophilia as well. So there are some risible opinions out there, and certainly people should be challenged on that. Now, we do need to judge this on a case-by-case basis. The Phil Anselmo one, Rob Flynn, to his credit, did come out and say this is unacceptable, and that created a spat. And now, Rob Flynn's on the wrong end of that, and he's lost a lot of fans. He wasn't the one who was doing a Nazi salute.
No.
I mean, Scott Ian, who's of Jewish heritage from Anthrax, he saw Phil Anselmo do that, and he just said, Phil, what are you doing? I mean, that looks pretty bad. So you can understand how he would take that personally. And he's a really nice guy, isn't he, Scotty? And I think he's probably made up with Phil Anselmo. Phil Anselmo didn't just apologise, he then had to go and look at his life and said, look, I was a raging junkie. So he's looked back and said, I don't want that to be representative of who I am. I understand that this is wrong. These are diabolical views, and as expiation for my sins, I'm just asking for your forgiveness. I do respect that. I don't think he will ever do it again. The question is, should you forgive them? It's a case-by-case basis, isn't it? I'll give you another example. Let's imagine you had a metal musician who converted to Islam and then wrote a death metal concept album about jihad and how he wants to destroy all infidels and murder Christians. I think we'd all be up in arms about that, wouldn't we? So it depends what it is. But certainly I think the ones that are really so they're beyond the pale, anything that's associated with paedophilia, absolute blacklist. Am I saying cancel? Will there even be an audience for it? It seems to be, to me, if you're going to be trawling through someone's Twitter from 7 years ago and then they make a comment about, oh, women should stay in the kitchen, and then you're not going to forgive them for that, and you're just going to say, oh, I can never listen to this music. I just think that's going too far.
Yeah, there's certain people who want to take that stance, though.
Yeah.
But not because they're so appalled by the behaviour. It's a trend in it to be offended and appalled by as your example, a tweet from 7 years ago that may be slightly misogynist.
I mean, is there anything more tragic?
You shouldn't burn your CDs with your favourite band because you've found out.
Is there anything more tragic than the present day where we don't need authoritarian government to censor us because our intellectual classes have been taken over by cultural Marxists, and all our public institutions are now left-wing and extreme and just want to... They're happy to censor themselves. And if this creeps into the music that we love, let's not forget, metal is a counterculture. We don't want this to be a place that's PC, where we have to, we want it to be a safe space for everyone, don't we? That's what we hear all the time. Does it need to be? If you've got extreme left-wing bands playing grindcore, and then you've got extreme right-wing bands playing black metal, at least, to be fair, the left-wing ones do believe in progress and redistribution of wealth, even though it's the wrong way of going about it. I think National Socialism, black metal is really beyond the pale, isn't it? NSBM, that's where you get real... That's where you really are in extreme territory, and it's whether we should be giving any clearance to views that clearly want to that are ethnocentric and have a bit of a murderous ideology behind them. That's where it's serious, isn't it? But any bullshit about somebody 7 years ago who said something that's transphobic, sorry, you're not a Nazi. You are allowed to have conservative views. You don't have to believe in that. And just because you've got an opinion on it doesn't mean that you are saying that you hate people that are what is the term? Sorry, I feel really ignorant here. Not transvestite. What is it when you transition?
Well, transgender.
Transgender, that's it. Yeah, sorry, that's unforgivable. Just the fact of my ignorance there. But
should we forgive him or he's apologised?
Case by case basis.
Case by case.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's pretty much it. The answer. Yeah. The answer, to, from our view, is
case
that
case.
Yeah, yes, you should. There are some that are on the outer extremes of this sort of topic that you mentioned, Kirk, that are just unforgivable. But yes, you should, but every person can consider each case on its own sort of.
Well, I think it's like it's the same as there's that common saying: you forgive and forget. I think you should be able to forgive, but I don't think you should forget. I think you
should hold them to account still.
Because they are a public figure, they have an influence on other people. People look up to musicians. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but they look up to these musicians and they literally take them into their life. Look at Sleep Token fans and Vessels and how much they adore this band. Now, if Vessel 1 went off and said something, no, he hasn't, but if he went off and did say something in a racist or a sexist comment, that would have a massive impact on that audience.
It'd divide them, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
There would be some that would forgive and forget, and would, even if the view affected them directly, they would. Their passion for the band would override that.
Yeah.
And there's others that would really take offence and walk away from the project.
And they'd go extreme. They would be burning their effigies and all sorts of stuff over it. So for me, I'm like with the bands, like with Phil. So for instance, when I wasn't the biggest of Pantera fans, but I had respect for Phil, and I was actually felt sorry for him for his drinking problems. When you saw him in Reinventing the Steel era and his drug problems, etc. Then he went off, and obviously the band separated, and he went off and did Down. I was like, well, maybe that's for the best things, etc. Then he's come out and made these comments, and I'm like, okay, I can forgive you for being a dick, because that's a dick comment to make. But I ain't forgetting about it. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, when the Pantera supergroup reunion came out, I didn't give a fucking shit about it. I mean, because I was just kind of like, do you know what? I don't really care about you,
and
Phil,
after that as well,
anymore.
If you ever got a chance to interview him, you'd probably decline, wouldn't you? I wouldn't want to interview Phil.
I don't have any.
No, I don't think he's a likeable person.
And that's the problem is.
I don't think you'd learn anything.
Prior to that comment, prior to him being a dick on stage like that, I probably would have wanted to interview him but my opinion of him has changed. And like when you fuck up in a relationship, and your wife, or if you're the wife and your husband forgives you for what you've done in your relationship, they may have forgiven you, but your trust is broken, and it takes time to build that trust up. And I think it's the same with bands. You can forgive them for that. If they've made an apology, you go, okay, fair enough. You don't trust that person anymore. You don't have the same relationship you had with that band. You're that rose-tinted sunglass viewpoint.
We're talking
of that
about
band
it now, aren't we? Pantera fans probably always bring up. The comments in question and other things he's done, and any other band member that this falls into.
Well, let's look at it we should look at it from the other perspective, and I'm going to use an analogy, and perhaps this explains why people do want to, is it deplatform or cancel musicians that are beyond the pale. The Christchurch massacre in New Zealand, I remember Jacinda Ardern coming out and saying, we will never mention his name again. I thought that's quite an effective way of dealing with it. Almost like this guy who went into these mosques and shot on 50-odd people, and that's probably what they're doing it for the right reason. It is coming from a good place in some ways, isn't it? I just think that we cannot escape the democratization of every aspect of life, and when it just starts coming into the music that we love, and then this, that everyone's got to be virtuous. This is fucking rock and roll, for God's sake. Some of the things that Led Zeppelin did on tour in the early 1970s, they'd be in prison for now. Same with Motley Crue. I just think that if we do look at it from that perspective, what Jacinda Ardern did, the New Zealand Prime Minister, we will never utter his name again. You can understand why they're doing that. That's deplatforming, isn't it? I mean, the guy got a life sentence though, that's the difference. So I do understand it, but I just think, do you know, as harsh as it sounds, there are probably more important things in life than deplatforming some underground fucking metal musician who made a sexist comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, there you go. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Should you forgive and should you forget? Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on another video sometime very soon. Take care.